On the spirit of reviewing one of those movies that Fox plays while you were either having lunch or waiting for The Simpsons to come up next, there are many of these movies who show up at this time who most people call chick flicks. A bit of a demeaning title, yes, but mostly what is the recipe for a chick flick is this. Beautiful girl played by a girl next door type actress who has the kind of job most of us dream about having while living in a city most of us dream about living in, and potentially dating a guy we must be dreaming about dating. The breakup is kind of that, but not quite, and somehow succeeds and fails in explaining something that we all wonder with these movies. What happens after happily ever after? So I watched The Breakup with Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn, and even though it can be easily dismissed as just another chick flick, this one does exemplify well the downfall and eventual ending of a dysfunctional relationship. So here's what I got from it. We are introduced to Gary, played by Vince Vaughn, in a baseball game with his best friend, when he notices Brooke, played by Jennifer Aniston, and he instantly becomes pushy towards her, even when she's going to the game with another guy. Even if the movie was trying to make it seem as a cute gesture, he was consistently trying to impose his presence over her space and her wish to remain distant. But after so many rather aggressive advances, she somehow is visibly charmed by him, and she caved in.
Well, I'm gonna go.
Okay, me too.
Okay.
To where? Just offered you a get out of board love for free card with no strings attached.
God, you're crazy.
In my opinion, this is definitely not a good start. And in this case, I would say spoiler alert, but well, the movie's called The Breakup, so it was a dead given from the start. After a cute introduction where we see they became a couple after some time, we cut to 2 years later into the relationship where we see their daily lives and even hobbies they share. She's an art dealer and he's a tour guide in Chicago. After an introduction of the character's lifestyle and jobs, we cut to the initial incident of the movie, where Brooke is cooking and Gary just got home from work. She asks for help and he decides to relax after a long day of work, which is something also Brooke had, but she's taking care of dinner. Then we get to the infamous lemon scene, where we see the cracks in the relationship first. She's telling him what to do and he barely does it. And then in response to her request, he just tries to charm his way out of doing it and make her do his job.
Oh, and then I've been cooking for the last 3 hours. Come on, help set the table.
Don't you want to finish it yourself and have that personal power, that accomplishment?
The dinner is taking place and we see their families being sat at the table and the dynamics between them. Gary makes a comment about a pool table from which Brooke seems visibly upset, letting us know that this is something that has been discussed in the past. But it's not something that should be brought in the middle of dinner with your whole family around. After dinner is when the shit really hits the fan and the real discussion starts. That it could have been put to rest if Gary wanted to help Brooke with the dishes, but he insisted on dealing with it like a giant baby.
Fine. I'll help you do the damn dishes.
That's not what I want.
You just said that you want me to help you do the dishes.
I want you to want to do the dishes.
Why would I want to do dishes?
And then the big moment comes. What gives the name of the movie? The breakup initiated by Brooke with a good reason.
I don't care, I'm done.
What?
I am done! I don't deserve this, I really do not deserve this!
Gary leaves and Brooke stays and talks to her best friend over the phone, telling her what she would expect him to do when he comes back. Meanwhile, he's drinking with his best friend and in denial of his own feelings. After the argument, they have another disagreement about who and how they're going to keep the apartment that they are both paying for. And the initial incident when Gary brings a pool table to the house, something that Brooke didn't agree upon. And Brooke's answer is this. From here on, there's gonna be a lot of situations in which they are perpetually trying to one-up the other, and in several situations when they'll involuntarily include friends and family members into the discussion, transgress each other's boundaries, and get out of their way to be petty to each other. Especially game night when the tension finally reaches a peak point and they blow up to each other in front of their friends.
Call yourself an artist? A 3-year-old with a box of crayons could do a better job than
Oh,
this.
you're not sorry I'd have the great talent standing on top of a big red bus and pointing out architecture that other great men have built.
One of their friends, who's a realtor, suggested that they sell the apartment since their relationship has clearly no way to come back to what it was. While Brooke is concerned about the prospect of losing Gary and asking people for advice on what to do, mostly misguided on what she could do to avoid that from happening, Gary is still in denial and doing absolutely nothing to fix what has been damaged, while still trying to display some dominance over the whole situation. Now that their condo is selling, they have limited time to do anything about their impending doom of their relationship. In a last try to fix anything left from it, Brooke invites Gary to a concert as a way to try to get him to get back together. A concert that Gary, for some reason, doesn't show up to. Back home, he tries to come into her room, apologizes, and offers to pay for the tickets as a way to somewhat compensate for what he has done. And here they finally do what they should have done from the beginning: talk. Brooke finally explains the toll that being the giver in the relationship has had on her and how Gary's lack of consideration makes her feel underappreciated. And Gary tells her that he was confused by her actions.
I don't feel you appreciate me. All I want is for you to just show me that you care.
He tried to talk to her, but it was too late. Way too late to do anything. After this final argument, we see Gary talking to his best friend at a bar where he confronts him and tells him how hard it is to live with him and how Brooke should have felt in all these years of relationship with him.
And no matter what she did and how hard she tried, you were never going to let your guard down. That poor girl never stood a chance.
After that, he finally understands her and prepares dinner for her as a way to somehow fix their relationship while she comes back with a supposed date. Gary tells her he's going to do everything he can to make her happy again, and Brooke tells him she doesn't want to try anymore. He accepts and leaves. Once the apartment is sold, they reflect on what they could have done better, and they finally split for good. After months, they find each other on the street, they talk again, Brooke looks great as always, and Gary looks well and put together. They are amicable and are happy for each other even though they are not together. Finally, they say goodbye and they go their ways, maybe even hinting at a reconciliation. I hope it doesn't happen, but oh well. In my opinion, this movie is by no means a great movie. It's supposed to be an anti-romantic comedy, however the romantic moments were not that many and the comedic moments fell flat on their face. In my opinion, the movie was sad and flat when trying to elicit a reaction about those two emotions. However, something the movie did unexpectedly well was capturing the dynamics of a dysfunctional relationship that was doomed from the beginning. Gary and Brooke are the kind of people who have nothing to do with each other. They have nothing in common and their lifestyles and expectations couldn't differ more from the others. Situation that, although is a recipe for a bad breakup or a bitter confidence, it's quite common in a lot of relationships we all at some point could have had over the years. Starting by the way they met each other and how from the beginning the more trained eye could pinpoint the reasons why these two would end up drifting apart. Gary approached Brooke in a pushy and overbearing way, and Brooke, in a way to appease and try not to be rude, just accepted his advances in spite of her subtle rejection of them. She was visibly charmed by him, somehow. Maybe it's because Jen Aniston and Vince Vaughn were dating at the time, I don't know. What we know is that these initial steps that have been mentioned would be one of the reasons why the communication between these two would be so difficult in later stages. Brooke seems like the person who would bottle up feelings and resentment over many expectations that weren't met, and Gary, being used to get what he wants, would disregard these concerns when they are presented as nagging and complaining. Sounds familiar? Because this is quite a common dynamic that is presented in relationships, mostly heterosexual ones. Gary, being the man in the relationship, has gotten used to just doing what he's being asked to do and getting out of situations he doesn't want to deal with, while Brooke has had to take care of her relationship, Gary, her personal life, her job, and herself. A pretty uneven dynamic if you ask me. Brooke is an art dealer. She works with Marilyn Dean, a temperamental artist who owns a gallery where she works with Christopher too. On a day-to-day basis, Brooke is composed, intelligent, soft-spoken, and delicate. She loves her job and her involvement in the art world too. Gary is a tour guide in his family's company. He works with his brothers, one of who is his boss and organizes everything, and this disgusting specimen that exists solely to make Gary look better in comparison. He's charming, upfront, energetic, fun, and he's also very happy at work. In terms of their lifestyle together, there are things that Brooke had to compromise in order to make it work. And we can see this in the initial argument where she discusses she would like to go to the ballet and Gary says he hates it. Because in this relationship, and apparently in his other relationships as well, he gets to do whatever he wants to do and people give him a pass because of his charm.
How many times do I have to drop hints about the ballet?
I hate the goddamn ballet.
Not about you loving the ballet, Gary. It's about the person that you love loves the ballet.
When's the last time you went to a Sox game? The Sox. Not when they're playing the Cubs either. We always do what you want to do, and she always did what you want to do. It's who you are.
And if they are not convinced by it, he proceeds to be very vocal about it.
Why do you show up for me?
I'm up on the bus every goddamn day for
Come
you.
on,
And when confronted, Brooke matches his level, but this happens until the conversation has escalated so much that it's difficult to contain. As it has been mentioned before, she bottles up so much, does so much, and receives so little in return that the end was doomed to happen. Not only does she do things to elicit a reaction from Gary, but she downright expects him to act the way her imagination tells her he should, and then be disappointed by the failure of her plans.
And then it's just gonna hit him that not only is he out a girlfriend, but his life is just falling apart piece by piece. And if he wants that life back, he's gonna have no choice but to change.
Gary, on the other hand, is absolutely oblivious of Brooke's tiredness and expectations on top of all the labor she has done during the relationship. He's not only oblivious, but he's downright dismissive when he's being confronted. He only thinks of himself. What he wants, what he feels, what he wants to do. Even his family and best friend tell him this. When he's mildly inconvenienced by something, or when the world doesn't stop to accommodate him, he throws an adult tantrum expecting to get out of things that are his responsibility or to get what he wants. This mindset of them make them unwilling to have a real conversation about this situation, either for fear or just lack of maturity that makes them having arguments in front of their family and friends. And when there's no argument in place, they're just trying to top each other in a childish way. Brooke as a way to manipulate Gary into doing what she wants, and Gary as a retaliation for what Brooke has done and to demonstrate he's the man of the house. In her final scenes together, when he doesn't show up at the concert Brooke was asking him to come with, Gary clumsily offers her to pay for the tickets. When he sees her cry, he pieces together what she was trying to do, and after she was decisive about the end, he makes dinner. Which makes me think, why did you have to wait so much and do so much more to get back at her and expect to fix everything with a meal? With food and a quick talk full of promises that weren't met in the 2 years of relationship you guys had.
And I've tried to act like it hasn't been that tough on me, but the first Sunday after me and you broke up, it all kind of really hit me. And I'd be happy to go take a dance class. Well, I would, honestly. I would like to go do that, or go travel. I mean, I'd even be willing to go to the ballet.
As I mentioned before, this is not an uncommon occurrence in real-life relationships, and these similarities between real life and fiction is what we will discuss next. What happened to Gary and Brooke is not an oddity. In fact, most heterosexual relationships have worked this way for ages, or at least for a very long time, beginning when the woman was the caregiver who stays at home. With the women's liberation movement that allows women all over the world the freedom to have their own things disassociated from their partner or a partner, their own bank accounts, their own money, their own agency, more and more women enter the workforce. This made women work alongside men in the workplace, not without setbacks that have been slowly worked upon, but I mean very slowly. Like, very slowly. Anyway, now it seems, at least in appearance, that we both have the same liberties, responsibilities, or positions. And that's the way we are led to believe, anyway. This is something that happened mostly in men-women relationships though. Although the part roles each of them plays, not strictly related to cishet relationships, is most of these who have been indoctrinated by this idea. The unpaid emotional labor that women do when it comes to relationships is outstanding. And although women are working and have more obligations, they are still expected to do the emotional and caregiving labor in the relationship. And men are not stepping up to their part, which leaves women in relationships tired, overworked, and underpaid. We see it with Brooke. She comes from work to cook dinner, clean the apartment, tell Gary when to shower, tell Gary what to wear, tell him to buy things, and basically call the shots for a work that it's supposed to be made by two people. So on top of work, she has to be Gary's maid, wife, mom, and supply all the other needs she's afraid to ask him to step up to, because when she does, she gets 3 lemons instead of 12. And this is not a dynamic that Gary is entirely compliant to, although he's mostly favored by it. By having someone tell him what to do, he resents the lack of decision power he has in his own place. But when he's left to his own devices, he's virtually incapable of making a move that is going to be positive for their relationship. That part of him is numb and underdeveloped. We could say it's either an accidental outcome or a premeditated one, depending on the situation, whether either men don't know how to act or they genuinely don't care and use manipulation tactics in order to get their way. We can say that Gary is a stereotypical man in a relationship. He's loud, he likes sports, plays video games, which are stereotypical male hobbies. Wants things to be done his way, and he doesn't express his emotions. And when he does express anything, it's anger. He's inconsiderate, has virtually no empathy for no one other than himself, and calls for other people's empathy upon his own issues. He had to see his girl crying and absolutely done with everything, and still he had to reach the point to step up and do something to show he cared about her only after his best friend tells him how inconsiderate he is. Gary is selfish and has this idea that the man of the house should be venerated, taken care of, and not bothered in his moment of decompression, even when he's needed to help with house chores. He's being projected as a selfish partner. But when being put in contrast with other male prospects in this movie, in a very jaded perspective, he doesn't sound so bad. Or at least that's what the movie wants us to think, because what's a little selfishness compared to the chauvinistic, ignorant, sexist, and potentially dangerous prospect his brother is?
I'd like to get you naked. And then I'm gonna take some saran wrap and I'm gonna wrap you up in it head to toe. And I'm gonna cut out 2 holes, one for your mouth so you can breathe, obviously, and the other one for...
Because at least you're with Gary and not with Lupus. Wait, his name is Lupus? Well, these kind of men are a debilitating disease, so it's quite an appropriate name. During one of the first arguments he has with Brooke, he emphasizes how much he works so Brooke doesn't have to, which is then contrasted by Brooke's answer.
You can make enough money to support both of us, and hopefully you won't have to work one day.
I want to work!
And thus let us see in which terms Gary sees an ideal relationship, and it's definitely not the terms Brooke sees it. Because she doesn't see work as a necessity. She does want to work and she loves her job, and this is not mentioned in the movie, but I will dare to say that Brooke may earn more money than Gary. On top of that, we also have Brooke's silence and resentful compliance, in which she doesn't ask for her needs to be met and prefers to supply those needs herself, since she knows Gary will do it poorly or find an excuse to get out of it. Although people like Brooke and women in general have been conditioned to accept this behavior in order to make a relationship work, this doesn't come with its own downsides, especially in the way the giver handles conflict. After Brooke doesn't get what she wants out of Gary, instead of communicating in an assertive way, she just moves on or makes passive-aggressive remarks in order to get his attention, and at the same time not to seem too naggy, pushy, or outwardly aggressive. Instead, she tries to move everything like a puppet master in order to try unsuccessfully to make Gary do what she wants to and become the person she wants him to be, which is an issue most women have been raised with. The concept that your love and your effort can change anything into your ideal version of your relationship. She was assessing Gary's response to her undercover action based on the idea of who she wanted Gary to be instead of who he actually was.
He's got some changes to make, and he's gonna come home and apologize.
Which led to a lot of bitter moments in which she didn't get the outcome she was waiting for. The concert, her dating other people, the lemons, and the expectations that he will step up and become a different person of who he was presented to be from the beginning were just that, her expectations. None of these ideas of what's going to happen were based on reality, and when her plans don't go her way, she reaches a breaking point in which not even the good advice and the support of her people will help her, and she just breaks in emotion, anger, sadness, and just full-on disappointment. In the end, she just left, and she did so decisively because she has finally given up. She was tired, worn out, and exhausted because even at the mere end, when Gary finally showed some kind of gratitude at the absolute end of everything, she had nothing else to give. She did everything, but the one thing she needed to do was talking. But to be fair, the way relationships have been laid by social expectations for so long, and with a partner so incompatible like Gary, the end of these two was just around the corner. In my opinion, this movie had a lot of flaws. It's not funny when it can be funny, it's kind of obnoxious, and the humor is bland and uncreative, and very creepy, which is quite concerning even for 2006 standards.
Find somebody that can't be traced back to either of us to visit this guy.
As a concept, it's good, and it does a good job exemplifying the issues mostly with heterosexual relationships. I wouldn't be surprised if these dynamics can be emulated in queer relationships, especially if people-pleasing and selfish tendencies merge together the way it happened here, no matter the gender of the people involved. What Gary and Brooke went through here, without the playful pettiness the movie wanted us to laugh at, it's something most of us can relate to, as a Gary or as a Brooke, or even as both. And the root of all of this is mostly two things I'd like to mention. One would be the unwillingness to effectively communicate to our partner. By not treating our partner as an equal, we are not only doing a disservice to them, but to ourselves too. Not giving them the chance to show up for us, or for us to show up for them. To actually understand where the issues are coming from and how to actually fix them instead of trying to always be right and prove a point. And last but definitely not least, to understand when it's worth giving a try and when it's necessary to let go and move on. Sometimes we are not being honest and we're painting a fake picture of who our partner is and even who we are, forming and projecting ideas onto ourselves or the other that were not sustained by longevity or just by our nature. Sometimes we hold on to people, situations, jobs, and places who are not serving us and who advertently or inadvertently are stopping us from becoming who we are meant to be, or who are blinding us from reaching a higher point in our lives. Gary and Brooke were fundamentally different in many ways. What was needed from them to work was going to be a difficult task from the start, especially when the work needed was not equal. By the end, we can see their breakup with a hint of hope, as most endings should be seen as, not as a hope for them to go back together, but more as a hope that since by the end they do become better people, this is just a step closer for them to find a way that is more suitable to each one of them and that is going to lead them separately to their own happiness. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye bye.